Hey, friends, don't get stuck in the past. That's going to be our thought for day 131 on our Bible reading plan. There's an interesting story in Ezra 3. Uh, you should read the whole chapter, but verse 12 is where I want to key in on. But many of the older priests and Levites and family heads who had seen the former temple wept aloud when they saw the foundation of this temple being laid, while many others shouted for joy. Right? See, it's hard to let the past go. And what had happened in this story is that God um, had his people build a beautiful temple for him, Solomon's temple, way back during the time of King David and Solomon. And the older generation that it mentioned here, they had seen that temple. Well, as we looked at a few days ago, when God's people turn from him, he often allows another nation to invade, and that nation destroyed the original temple that God had built. Um, and many of God's people had spent about 70 years in captivity. After that 70 years was up, they were, if they chose so, they were allowed to return from where they had been taken and then to rebuild the temple. When they began to rebuild the temple, after they were allowed to return home, um, some of the people that had seen the first temple saw what was happening, and they said, "This is just not going to have the same grandeur as the first temple did," and it made them sad. It made them depressed. They began to weep. See, the juxtaposition here is that the younger generation had never had a temple to worship in, and um, for the first time, they were going to be able to experience God's salvation in the way that it was intended to be. The older generation was so sad, and the younger generation was like freaking out because they were so excited. Two things can be true. The younger generation needs to learn to respect the feelings of the older and not just force them to move on, right? Just for moving on's sake. Because just because something seems right doesn't make it right now. The older generation needs to let go of some of their traditions when they stop serving the mission. There are too many churches that are doing things just because it's the way they like them or the way that they've always done them, right? That makes it about us and not about the mission. See, what we need to understand is that the next generation typically, but not always, understands where the world's headed better than we do, who are a part of the older generation. They understand the times, to use a biblical phrase. And as churches, we're just not very good at this. We've got to honor the past, but not get stuck in it. For the sake of the mission, we've got to move on. Have a beautiful